Right, so this is the agenda for today. So we're going to do introductions, which we've gone through now. I'll open up the workbook just to go through it as a virtual tour. You should be able to have access to that now, and you should see it as a tile next to your other one on your homepage. So I think that was released this morning. We're going to go through access and resources. So how to find journals, how to find books. We're going to talk about evaluating those resources, what's good and bad about them. And then we're going to do some stuff about academic writing. And then Martin's going to come in and just talk about the next steps. So like I said here, as a university, we're really experienced with teaching students that particularly haven't come from an academic background. We've got a lot of experience of working with military colleagues that traditionally haven't been academic coming into this program. So we will have a lot of support, and there's a lot of resources you can go back to that I think Martin has included the links within your workbook as well.
Yeah.
So like I mentioned before, the bridging course is about proving the level 4 study, an introduction to academia. So it is just an introduction, and it's about just getting you in the right headspace. So when you do approach the apprenticeship and the level 5 program, you've got a head start, and then accessing the degree apprenticeship, as this is an entry requirement. So let's move on to looking at the bridging course. So you will be able to access the bridging course by going to your Pebble Pad. And you'll be able to just go into there, and it should be there already inside your system. So let me just load that up.
And just to confirm, I spoke to Jeremy, Tom, we have released it to all students now, labelled as level 4, so it will be in their workspaces.
So it says SCAS Level 4 is what it's called. Right. So can people see that on my screen?
Yeah.
So this is what you'll open up on your introduction. Now Martin's created a video here to talk you through the process. So this video, if you need to remind yourself how to access this portfolio, there's an introduction there. And there's also a resource here to remind you how to get to the student services and to get to the resources. We've also got some useful links here that you can click straight on. So we've got a link to the JAL Count Guidelines, which is an ebook, Anatomy and Physiology book, Nancy Caroline, if you've heard of that one, which is quite a renowned book in the sector, a more complex anatomy and physiology one for those of you that maybe studied it before or want to look into more detail. Nice guidelines, safeguarding, and then Khan Academy is a real good resource to read up on. It's on YouTube, and it's a good resource to read up on anatomy and physiology. And then we've got the presentation that I'm delivering today on here as well. So what you have across the top is similar to your other workbook, where you've got separate sections and there's tasks to do in each section. So I'm going to go through today in our session some introductions to those tasks. But if you click on the top, there are some introductions. It talks about what the tasks are. So what we're going to talk about today is evaluating websites and give you information about that, how to evaluate an article, a journal article, and then doing a reflection. And you just type in these sections here your response. Once you've completed it, please just tick the progress check on the bottom, and we'll be able to come in as assessors and give you some feedback on that as well. So first one's about academic writing, which we're going to talk about today. Then the second one is about developing practice. So you have to reflect on a communication incident you've had, and there's a word count there. The next task is about protection of clients, so safeguarding. So you have to talk about safeguarding policies and procedures, and you have to talk about risk assessments. Moving on from that, this one's more getting into the clinical aspect of the level 4 program. So you have to describe with reference to anatomy and physiology about an anaphylaxis patient. Bullet point plan in terms of evidence-based practice for that scenario. And then there's a few more tasks, one about myocardial infarction and then one about evidence-based practice for the same situation. And again, we've highlighted some links in there that you can use to support your writing these sections. And you just fill it out in here. The next module that you have to complete is about, we're asking you to look at strokes, and then a bit more about the administration of medicines in terms of myocardial infarction. And there's just some questions you have to answer here. And here's a more scenario-based question where you have to read through the scenario and then answer your question related to the scenario. The next one's about decision making. So you all will make decisions at the moment. Your experience of working in the ambulance service, and although you may not be the lead clinician, you will make decisions on a regular basis in terms of patient care. So it's just talking about your discussions around that. Then we've got a section about occupational health. We've put some links there that you can read through, and then you need to talk about moving and handling and how that relates to the legislation. And then one of the final tasks is to provide a analysis of a topic of your choice. So we're going to talk through today about academic writing, and you're going to use that to complete this analysis of a topic of your choice. So you may choose intubation, you may choose oxygen and CVA. It's completely up to you, and it's about having a bit more of a go at academic writing. Like I said, it's about introducing you to the resources, having a go at trying to put sentences together and put references in. What we really want you to do is to try and engage with it and get feedback. We're going to be doing a pass-fail, so it is really about how much you engage rather than the quality, because we want to give you that support now so you're prepared and you understand what's expected of a degree level program. That's really the key about this program. It's about giving you an understanding of the expectations of academic writing. And then at the end, there's a self-directed course, which is through Open Blackboard, and that's about academic skills, which you'll need to complete as well. So it is self-directed. There is a lot of resources that we've created there for you to work through in your own time. The session I'm going to do today is going to prepare you for that and going to give you the skills for that. And it's about just trying to engage with academic writing. It may be something new for a lot of you, which is understandable, but we're hopeful that this will help bridge the gap into academic writing. So when you do come onto the course, you're prepared for it, because that's often an area that people worry about, academic writing, because they might not have done it before. So we're really giving you the most we can now so that you're best prepared when you do start. Just pause there for any questions. So I'll come back to the grid and I'll try and open the chat up. If people want to type some questions in the chat if they have any, or just speak up if you've got any questions. I'll take the silence as no one's got any questions, which is fine.
Oh, they're busy typing.
Yes, I think I can see people typing if they are, but I'll give it another.
Well, what's the time frame on completing this?
So this needs to be done at a similar time to your completing the whole course. So right. Martin can correct me on this, but the earlier you start, you'll be able to get some feedback, but at the same time, we put them on parallel to each other, so you can go through that.
That's correct, Tom. We released part 1 because of the practical logbook, which takes the it takes the largest portion of the level 3 portfolio, and that runs throughout till the end of August. The time frame for this, basically by submission at the end of August, we need to have this part level 3 and level 4 completed. So you need to have completed this workbook and completed your level 3. workbook. For those that are in a position and they want to submit slightly earlier, if you get mid-August and you say, I think I've done this, no problem at all. If you feel it's ready for submission, we can jump in and look at getting that marked, okay? But certainly by the end of August, because of the paramedic course, that's what we need to have these two elements done.
I think, Jeremy, can you just come in and just talk about Grammarly? Because it is a useful thing that I've got loaded on my computer.
Yeah, Tom, I think with all the nervousness about academic writing, feedback we've had from a number of students about the free browser extension you can get called Grammarly, which I've typed in there. And I noticed that Tom has it installed on his browser, so that when Tom actually clicks on any text entry section, any reflection, there's a small green G icon appears bottom right, and Grammarly in real time checks for spelling mistakes, grammar, and makes little prompts. And it's a really nice aid to the writing, especially when you're typing away at speed, and it gives you little prompts. It's completely free. There is a higher level paid service, but actually for your purposes, it would be all you need, the free version. You do need to check that you've got the British English rather than the American spellings, but it's very simple to run, and it's a nice addition as you're getting into the practice of some of this academic writing. It's nice to have some live support.
So we can send you a link of how to upload that if people want, and they might find that useful.
Yes, please.
But it's brilliant. We'll send that through. I think there's probably a link on YouTube we can send to you that talks through that. But I certainly use it for a lot of my stuff, and it really helps because it works on websites as well. So it helps when you're working through PebblePad.
Tom, I've done a little PebblePad resource about it, so I'll share the link with everyone after today, and it's just a few screenshots and a little bit of information, basically what we've said this morning.
Are there any other questions? Just and please spend some time looking through that. But we try to make similar to the bridging one. Martin's tried to put lots of videos in there, lots of links, and it is self-directed, so you should be able to work through that. And again, although people may be apprehensive about academic writing, it's about having a go, then we can give you some feedback, and then you can move forward. So what you need to do as a minimum requirement is demonstrate your clinical knowledge so that you understand practice, and that's what we'll be mainly looking at in terms of demonstrating your clinical knowledge and having a go at the academic writing. Okay. Right, I'll move on to the next section. So the next section, can people still see my screen?
Yeah.
Perfect. So the next section is about accessing resources. So we're going to talk about OneSearch and how to access OneSearch. We're going to talk about all the resources that we have that you're able to access with your login details. So the login details you use for PebblePad will get you into all our resources, and it will give you a head start in terms of being able to access the resources. So it'll give you a ability to access library resources, books, journals, and all those different areas. So what I'd like you to do is just in the chat box, can you put in some different types of resources that you could use to support your practice and academia as well? Okay, YouTube, yeah, that's a good one. So YouTube's really good for learning things. So if you want to learn different aspects, it's really good in terms of anatomy and physiology, assessment skills. We'll talk in a minute why it might not be good to use in your assignments, but really useful for those visual learners. Well, we've got books and journals. We're going to go through how to evaluate them as well. Internet, we're going to talk about evaluating websites. People have put SCAS policy and procedures, which are really important to look at. Podcasts, some people are quite audio listeners. Brilliant. Someone's put not Wikipedia, which is great. we'll probably teach you a bit of a cheat on how to use Wikipedia. Wikipedia tells you references at the bottom, so you go to those references and use them instead. Is probably the best way to use it rather than referencing Wikipedia. So your educational teams and your managers, yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to do today is just talk through good types of evidence, because academia is about using good evidence to support your arguments. When you're writing assignments, you need to use high quality evidence rather than low quality evidence. And that means that when you're presenting an argument, it's the best argument you've got rather than presenting a weak argument. So these other two questions I'd like people to put in the chat group. We'll probably just focus on the first one now. Why is it important to evaluate resources? And if people want to shout up as well, please just unmute your mic and talk through it, or put it in the group. Happy for either. There's probably enough for people to just talk. So Andy, you put about reliability. What do you mean by that?
So you need to make sure that your resource is a reliable source. So the information is accurate.
Okay. Yeah, bro. I think a few people are typing, so. Okay, Howard, thank you for that. So what do you mean by that in terms of practice? Oh, I think your microphone might not be working. I think you're unmuted, but your microphone's not plugged in.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we need to be obviously making sure that we're current with our practice. And if you're using sources which may not be reliable or current or entirely relevant, or you're not sure that they are, then you could end up in a situation where you're not using the most current evidence that that your practice is right.
Brilliant. I think what's really great to see is all the things that you're saying are what evidence-based practice is about. And I think if we had this conversation with the ambulance service 10 years ago, we'd probably have a very different answer. But evidence-based practice is there in everyday practice, and we use it a lot of the time. So it's really great to see that everyone's got a good understanding of it. So what I'd like you to do now is a little task, which will probably break away for 5 minutes. I'd like you to find what you think is a really good website and what you think is a really bad website. So just get two websites in to do with health, so healthcare related. So have a look on your phone or on another resource, and we'll just pause for 5 minutes to go away and try and find a good and a bad website. And then we're going to go through some checklists to see whether or not we've got the same idea of what good and bad is, and try and find the worst. Try and find something that's just horrendously bad in terms of giving really bad advice or information, and try and find what you think is a reputable, good resource to use. So we'll just pause. We'll have 5 minutes. So we'll come back in and try and have that website ready. Okay. I'll just give everyone a couple more minutes just to find those websites. And if you could post them in the group of just put bad first and post one in and good afterwards, that would be great. Getting some good answers coming through now. So what I'll do is while you're typing in there, I'll just move on to the talking about what are some good things to use to evaluate websites. So I've got some checklists, and the task you have to do on the workbook is pick a website and then evaluate it against the things we're going to talk about. So you've already got the website there, hopefully, and you can use it to evaluate against the criteria that we're going to talk about now. So the first section is about trustworthiness. So here are some things that you can use to help with the trustworthiness of a website. So looking at the domain name, so .com or .co are generally commercial sites. .org is generally a non-profit organization, or .nhs is a non-profit organization. .ac is a university resource. .gov is a governmental resource, so any Department of Health .gov, for example. Personal web pages and URLs may contain personal information like names and have, rather than a formal www. They'll have names in there and perhaps not as pertinent. There's some really good things that people have put up about WebMD. I'll talk about as well, because that's a tricky one in terms of that, but we've got some good ones in terms of Geeky Medics, British Medical Association, NHS. You've got some bad ones which are Just Answers, which is great, Docs, and I think just looking through there, people have put Reddit, which is great because that's just a blog site, so using that as your resources, and Research Council. Okay, so the next section we'll talk about is the intention. So it's always good to look at the intention behind a website. For example, is it a website that's trying to sell you stuff? If it, for example, is a commercial website that's trying to sell you things, the intention is going to be challenging in terms of they're not trying to educate you. Whereas some of the good ones you've talked about, NHS, their intention is to educate practitioners. So that has got a more valid and professional intention behind it. Looking at the currency, all the NHS websites will generally have a date when the information was updated, especially if it's clinical guidance or clinical information. So having the currency is important, so then you know when the information is produced. The knowledge base, so where are they getting their information from? You may see blog posts where people just provide a whole description of something but don't really tell you where they're getting the information from. NHS websites, British Heart Foundation websites will tell you where they get their resources from. Level is important as well. Some people have put some websites that are more related to patients. So for example, British Heart Foundation websites, they're really good because they provide information for patients. But if you're a practitioner, you'll probably go to the NHS because that's a more useful level for you. When you're looking at the information, you may look at other resources to check whether they're correct. So checking how accurate the information is, cross-referencing it to other websites. Also, some websites that aren't very good, they don't have an ability for you to engage with them, so they're quite flat. So you'll just put a resource up there and you won't be able to respond back to it. There won't be an email address to query anything. So having a contact information is useful. And then just your general thoughts about it. What do you think about this website? Do you think there are any concerns about it? Would you use it to support your practice? So what you can do now as one of your first tasks is use the websites you found, either the good one or the bad one, and use that to do the first task within the workbook. And it shouldn't take too long. You just need to write a couple of sentences about each section and about how your website is good or bad. So that's one of the first tasks you have to do, and it's just about using the information we've talked about now to evaluate a website. So I'm just going to go through now some useful resources. So these resources are in your workbook. This presentation is also up on your workbook as well. But Skills at Cumbria is a location within our university website where all our help and resources are. So if I just click on this and we just go through Skills at Cumbria, can everyone see the website there? Yeah. So this is a great space to go to if you want any help with any research, academic writing, preparing yourself for getting into academic writing. So here is the central location where you can find all the resources. So if I just click on finding information, which we're going to talk about in a minute, this talks about how to use books and ebooks. It talks about how to use journals, how to search for literature. We're going to talk about OneSearch in a minute, but there's also a video on here about how to access OneSearch, which you can click on. And this is a great space. In a couple of weeks' time, if you forget how to do things, come back to here and all the information's there. And you can access it by just clicking on the link. And when you access some of the resources, it may ask to put your username and password in. And that's when you can put the username and password that you've got into there to access it. So just to go back to the PowerPoint, there is a section about referencing, a section about reflection. I'll put the direct links in here. So really good place to look for if you need any support. You may feel like you've done academic writing before and absolutely brilliant, and it may be a touch up. Some of you may not have touched academic writing, so please engage with these resources and have a look in here for some tips. What we also have is the subject resource page. So this links to our university website for all information related to paramedic practice. So here's a good one if you need to find research information about clinical aspects of practice. The other link, Skills at Cumbria, is about the support skills to use the resources, where this is dedicated to paramedic practice. So it talks about the how to search. It talks about the books and ebooks we have, the journals we belong to. So there is Anatomy TV, which is an online resource you can use. There's some journals here that you can click on. A real good resource for those of you that are quite social media engaged is to look at PhoneMed. So PhoneMed is free open access medical education. And if you type that into any search engine or into any social media site, if you put hashtag first, which searches, and then put PhoneMed in, there are loads of resources out there that you can use that's free and open, and podcasts and audio. So that's a good way to get some resources. And there's a link here to Life in the Fast Lane, and Life in the Fast Lane's a repository for all these different resources. So that's a great access that you can use. And then it talks about all the different resources you can go through. So great place to find your information. So we've got skills at Cumbria, which teaches you how to use the academic writing skills, and then the subject page, which is paramedic practice. So this will give you a nice head start on looking through that information. What I'd like to go through now is something called OneSearch. So OneSearch is our search engine, our Google within university. And basically what OneSearch does is it only searches credible resources. So it will only give you responses from good places. And it won't be like Google where it shows you adverts and it shows you different areas. It only shows you credible resources. So a real good place to use and to access to get high quality information. So in this presentation, again, we've included a link to the actual guide. So here's how to use OneSearch, how to search for books, how to search for journals. I'm going to show you it now, but that link takes you to the guide place if you need to use it later. So I'm going to talk through how to use OneSearch. So to access OneSearch, you can click here. And this will take you through to OneSearch. So this location is where you find information about practice. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to show you how to find a piece of evidence. I'm going to search for a piece of evidence. And then what I'd like people to do is try and log on to OneSearch and try and search for that evidence as well. So the link should be in the website. I will put it into the group as well, but it should be on the PowerPoint. And you should be able to link in there. And it is also, I'll show you how to get through it through the university website. So what I'd like to show you now is looking at trying to find an asthma article. So if I search here, this is just searching for everything. And you see we've got loads of books in here about asthma that we could go and have a look at. But what I want to do is press this drop down here, which will just show me the articles. So I'm going to press search there. And I'm going to try and find some articles about asthma. And there's one here at the top. If I just click on this available online, it will take me through to this page. Now this page has got lots of information on it, but all you need to do is see where it says full text availability. You just need to click on one of these locations and it'll take us through to the actual article. And again, there are videos on that link that I provided where you can watch this through again and look through it. You have to agree to the cookies on this. And we've got an article here which we can get the full text PDF version about asthma. So what I would like people to do, and I'll just go through how to access OneSearch from your own computer. So if, for example, you are to go to www.cumbria.ac.uk and then in the top corner press student. Some people may have accessed PebblePad through this route where it gets to your student hub. So you may have accessed PebblePad. So go to cumbria.ac.uk and go to OneSearch, go to student. And then here, down this side, can you see there is library and learning. So we can click on library and learning. And also over here, there's library straight to OneSearch. So this will take you straight to OneSearch. And what I'd like people to do now is to go to the Cumbria website, go on to the student, and then go on to OneSearch and just have a mess around and try and find a few things. So spend 10 minutes just trying to search through that resource. Again, there's a video online to recap how to do it, but I just want you to have a go at just trying to search things, and you use this search bar here to search for different conditions and try and find an article on that or a book. Is that okay? So we'll give you 10 minutes to just look through one search and try and find some resources. And just shout up or tap in the comments bar if you need any support or there's anything not working, and we can work through with you. And I put the link in the chat group if you can see that.
How do you get the articles to open?
Yeah, sorry. So what you need to do is put a topic in. So let's see if this works. So if you put a topic in, then go to articles. It should be an available online link. Just check in the top corner to make sure you're signed in. So it should say your name in the top right hand corner. If it says sign in, then you just need to click sign in. But if your name's in there, so then what you'll have is it should be a green available online button. So click on that, and then it will give you a few options. And basically what it gives you is the options of different places that the same article is saved. So it may be in different databases, for example, and then you just click on that link under View Online, and it should open it up there.
Right, yeah, it's doing it. Thank you.
And you've got all the books in here as well. So all the paramedic books in terms of Baber, Sanders, clinical practice procedures is all on there. All these available online versions. So we buy online first. So you can view all these books online. So if I just click on this, it shows you can access this and you can read online. So this is a paramedic guide to research, and we can have a look through this book online.
Yeah, Tom, at the moment it's not letting me log in.
Okay, are you trying to put your email address in and it's not accepting it? Or?
Yeah, it's not accepting my my Cumbria account for some reason. I don't know why.
Okay, well we can pick that up outside this.
Yeah, I'll try again later, and because it may be that the way I'm going in at it, I don't know, but it's yeah, at the moment it doesn't want to play.
Okay, so we can check that later.
Thank you.
Tom, how did you get to that paramedic's guide to research again?
Yeah, so so this, let me just go back. So everyone can follow along with this then if they can. If they go to One Search homepage and just put paramedic in. It will show green if they're online versions. It may show you some ones in our library in Lancaster, which potentially, unless you're willing to take a round trip in a day, probably not that appropriate. But you can click online. So if we go on to, for example, manual clinical procedures and click view online, it will come up with something probably called Dawsonaria ebooks. So then you click on that there. It's always in the same place. It's always view online, view text availability, and you click on the blue name and it opens up. And this opens up the first page of it, and at the bottom you can either download it to use it offline or you can read online. Did you get through to that, Meryl?
Not quite, but I'm sure I will with a bit of playing around.
Yeah, and I'll post the videos on there so you can use it. But you've got access to all these resources now, and you'll get access if you come onto the paramedic degree apprenticeship as well, and you can view them from home and look through them as you want. And they should help you answer some of the workbook as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's just go back to the PowerPoint. This is a link to an ebook, so you can try and click on this direct link and it should take you to an ebook, which should help as well. So later on, if you want to see whether or not you can access an ebook, just click right on this link and it should open it up. So I'm just going to explain now and spend a bit of time just talking through what a journal article is, because they're quite unique things, and if you haven't read them before, they're a bit strange in how they're written, and I'd just like to talk through them briefly now. So a journal itself is journal of paramedic practice is like talking about a newspaper. So you could imagine journal of paramedic practice is like the Daily Telegraph or the Daily Mail. That's the newspaper, and inside that they have articles. So a journal article is a piece that's written by an individual that's inside the wider journal. So a journal article is a specific written bit of text about a topic, and they sit inside a wider journal, for example, Journal of Paramedic Practice. You may have heard of British Medical Journal, that's another one. You may have heard of British Paramedic Journal, which is the College of Paramedics version of an academic journal. And they have a way of identifying which article they are. So they talk about a volume, then they talk about an issue, and then they talk about the page numbers. And at the bottom here, this is how they write the reference, so you can find it in future. So you can find it in future reasons. We've put a PDF onto the workbook. No audio coming through. I think we are recording this as well, Jason. So we're recording this later if the audio is not working, so we can pick that up as well and maybe pick it up outside that. In terms of referencing, at this stage, as long as you put something down where you found the information, that's what we're wanting. We're not too focused on you getting it right, because you'll learn that when you come into the academic practice, but we've included a PDF that has a how-to guide, which you can follow in terms of referencing. So have a go at doing it. If you don't get it precisely right, don't worry too much, but it's about just having a go. But referencing is the way that we let people know who's reading our work, where we got the information from. And that's basically why we reference, so we can tell people where we got the information from. So here is a permalink to a journal article on asthma. So I will include this inside the chat box. And hopefully people can click on it and have a look what an article looks like. So you should be able to click on that link, hopefully. And it'll open up, so this one's a book, sorry, this, yeah, let me get up the right page. There we are. So this will open up a direct link to an article on asthma, which you can click by pressing MA Healthcare Journal. And then click the view article. And this is an article from the Journal of Paramedic Practice. Now, I think what will be good now is if we just take a little break for people to just rest their eyes and get away from it, because we've gone through quite a lot. So if we take a 5-minute break to just turn your screens off, go away and get a coffee and come back and get a drink. When you come back, we'll just talk through this article and then we'll move on to academic writing. So try and just turn your screens off, walk about for a bit and move outside and then come back in. If we say 11:05, and then we'll continue going for about 45 minutes about academic writing, and then we'll move and then finish the session, if that's okay.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
wait for everyone to get back and then we'll move on. The next thing we're going to talk about is just one of the tasks you have to do is talk about journal evaluation and evaluate a journal. So we're just going to quickly go through that and then move on to the task where we talk about academic writing. And we'll keep that hopefully quite short and quite simple, and then open to questions at the end and then finished. So we will have covered quite a lot in this 2-hour session, I do understand that, but hopefully there's loads of videos there you can access at a later date to come back to and remind yourself of how it works and everything that we do. So what we also need to do is, although journals are generally seen as all reputable, it's still important for you to evaluate them and evaluate their quality. So we've given some checklists to evaluate them, and the checklists basically are progressive, and if you don't think it's relevant at that point, you're going to put it in the bin and not read it. So generally when you search for things, you might get quite a lot of responses and hits on the search section, so you need a way to filter that out and look at only the relevant stuff. So first of all, when you're looking at a journal article, relevance is important to look at. So that's relevant to you as a technician or a student paramedic, relevant to the ambulance service. For example, there might be an article about treatment and management of asthma in a clinic setting, which probably wouldn't be that relevant to you compared to treatment and management at the back of an ambulance. So relevance is the first thing you're looking at. The next section is you're looking to see whether there's quality checks. The way to do this is to have a look at the journal that it's within. So if it's Journal of Paramedic Practice, just search that on Google and see whether it's peer reviewed. So peer reviewing is a process where, for example, if I'm submitting an article, I'll submit it to the journal, and then 2 other people from academia will read it and see whether they think it's correct. So it gets checked independently to see whether it's correct or not. And the journal will tell you whether or not they peer review it. And it's something called blind peer reviewing. So I review articles for the British Paramedic Journal. I can't see who the author is, and I can't see what the comments are of the other reviewer. So they assess it and assess its quality. The purpose is important to check out. So you're looking at why this has been produced, this research. So sometimes big drugs companies, you might have heard of GlaxoSmithKline or Unilever, some of the biggest companies in the world, they pay for research to be undertaken, and they will keep paying for research to be undertaken until they get a good piece of research that supports their product. So you need to check whether or not the purpose behind that research. A lot of the research you might read are probably written by paramedics in terms of education and informing the community. Currency, in terms of clinical practice, generally what we say is in the last 5 years is current. Paramedic practice changes so quickly that something, for example, written 10 years ago will be different to it now. So we want to use the most current wherever possible. There may be some things that you are relying on that's older than that. For example, you may have some research about learning styles or communication styles. That will probably last longer. Who the author is, what credibility they have. Are they a janitor that doesn't know about academic practice or doesn't know about the ambulance service, or are they actually someone that works in the ambulance sector? So do they actually work in the ambulance sector? Do they have some authority to speak about the topic they're speaking about? Or are they just someone on a blog writing away about something? The publisher is what we would call the journal, so Journal of Paramedic Practice. And they'll basically say in their website what they're about. If they say, we only publish stuff that positively reinforce drug companies and we want to increase their financial beneficial and we want to make their profit margins better, then you probably won't go anywhere near them. But if they say we're an educational journal, we're about improving the profession, then that will be a good publisher. Talking about the writing style, a lot of the Journal of Paramedic Practice are written towards other paramedics. They're quite simple and easy to read. You may read some medical ones that are quite complex and academic. And generally what most paramedics do is they go towards the more straightforward practitioner research. So journals, Journal of Paramedic Practice, British Paramedic Journal are very practitioner focused and written for paramedics. And then lastly, you're just seeing whether they're actually using any evidence. So looking at their reference list, see if they've got any references in there. So at the end of a journal article, they'll put how many references they've used. If they haven't got any, then it's just them talking about it, and that's not academic writing. So there are some quick tasks to do. You've got to go away and do a task on your workbook about journal evaluation. Have a go, have a look at journals, get reading them. I personally find them quite easy compared to a book because they're quite split up in different sections, and I find it easier to read that way. So they're not as big as books, so you can find quite good information in them. But just have a go and have a look at them, and then choose one to evaluate. So for the next half an hour, we're just going to talk about academic writing, and that's the last thing we're going to talk about. So we've gone through how to access resources, and hopefully you can go away and look at how to find the resources. Now what we're going to talk about is how to write an academic sentence and how to write academically. I'll say this now, but it is basically a game, and you need to learn the rules of the game. And that's all it is. When I started at university, I've got dyslexia myself, so I struggle with academic writing. My first year, I got 40% in most of my assignments, and then I ended up with a first in my degree because I figured out what the rules of the game were. And it's just practice. And it's practice like you were kicking a football, like you would do anything else. You just need to practice it. So it's just about figuring out what the rules are and how to do it, and then applying it. And if it's the first time, you'll probably be a bit clumsy at it, and you might be a bit awkward at doing it. But it's like the same as picking up any new skill. When you first start doing it, it's a bit awkward and difficult to do. So hopefully what this course allows you to do is practice that in a safe space where you give you some feedback. And then when you come onto the course, it should help you move forwards into that. So just bear in mind that it will be a bit frustrating, and referencing will probably be the bane of your life on this course, because you'll get frustrated with that. And if anyone's done any higher education before, it's about where the dots and commas are and where the full stops are and the brackets and all that kind of stuff. And you'll probably be frustrated with us as academics because it's just learning how to do the game. So the main thing that we're going to talk about today is the difference between description and analysis. Another method would be argument and assertion. So what we want you to do is to be analysing things in academic practice and not just describing them. So in terms of description, it's telling a story. It may be describing things. What we want you to do is to question, to actually articulate an argument and bring up pros and cons rather than just telling a story of what's happened. It's important to actually analyze it. So I'm going to go through what description is. So description is generally what, where, when, and who. So just describing things. And it's important to do that because you need to describe what's happened, but keep description as minimal as possible and keep analysis as high as possible. And generally what we find is people that have lower grades in academic practice have a high level of description and a low level of analysis. And those with higher grades have a higher level of analysis and a lower level of description. And it's just learning the rules of what analysis is and what description is. So going through each section, description about what is this about? What's the context or situation? What's the problem you're exploring? So it's an introduction to the information. Where does it take place? So it might be in the back of an ambulance, it might be in the patient's home, it might be a discussion between a patient and a caregiver. So where did it take place? When did it occur? So it occurred at 2 AM on a motorway, upside down in a car. So you're talking about when, which is important. And who might be involved. So for example, if you talked about a safeguarding incident, it might be when you were at a patient's home on a night shift, and there was the carer, there was the child, and then there was yourself and a crewmate. So you're describing what happened, and that's important to set up the scene, but we want to keep that description to as minimal as possible and as small as possible. So important to describe, but keep it as small as possible. What you want to focus on is trying to analyze as much as possible, or to create argument. So that's asking why, how, and what if. So it demonstrates a greater depth of knowledge and understanding, allows you to engage further with the topic, and it promotes a more comprehensive understanding of the topic. So in terms of what argument is, it's not just a heated discussion. We're not talking about two people shouting at each other. And it's not just about disagreeing with each other. If anyone's seen that Monty Python sketch about an argument, it's paid for an argument. It's not just holding opposite positions to each other. It's having a reasoned support of your idea so that your audience and reader can be persuaded by you. So some analogies that I use is if I'm having an argument with Martin in a pub, and we're sitting there talking about something related to healthcare. For some reason, we're that boring. We only talk about healthcare in pubs when we're on night out. But if we were doing that, and Martin was talking about his argument, and it was just him on his own, and he was saying one thing, and my argument, I had behind me in my corner, so my mates talking behind me were World Health Organization, College of Paramedics, the most expert in clinical practice. Who do you think's got the best argument? Who's going to win? So it's about having a strong argument and about being based on evidence, not just saying your own opinion. So that's really important. And that's why we do things, to make the argument better. And actually, it's the same reason, and bear with me with this one, but it's the same reason why judges wear wigs and barristers wear wigs. Because what they do is it depersonalizes them, and they present the argument on its own. It's not got their own opinion attached to it. It's just the argument and the facts. So they all wear the same clothes and the cloaks, because it's not about them, it's about the argument they're presenting. And that's what you want to try and do when you're writing academic writing, is present an argument and everyone to agree with it. And it's not you that's saying it, it's the evidence that you're presenting. And you're just providing the conclusions and the explanation. So it's a way of getting your ideas across, and it's a way of getting through academic practice, and it's a way of looking at things more detailed. So to go into that in a bit more detail now, so asking why is really important. So why is this argument and decision solution? Why not something else? Why did this occur? So for example, you may have noticed at the moment there's a debate about paramedics and intubation. I don't know what the position currently is with SCAS, but some ambulance services have taken away intubation off paramedics. Someone might be able to help me out with that, whether they're still intubating or whether it's just senior colleagues.
They're still doing it, SCAS.
Yeah, so Yorkshire have taken it off, London have taken it off. I think Northwest are probably soon to do it. So there's a big argument about whether or not intubation is useful for paramedics to do. And it all revolves around the fact that we don't do it very much. And when we do it, we're not very good at it. And actually some things come along that replaces it that's pretty much similar to it, and that's the iGel. So we're exposing ourselves to all this risk of doing intubation and all the complications that come with it, of failed intubation and esophageal intubation, which is something that has been identified as a never event in the NHS. So esophageal intubation should never, ever happen under any circumstances. And I'm sure you've experienced where it's happened in practice, where they've intubated the esophagus. And they brought in stuff like end-tidal tracing now, because they want to try and stop that from happening. But they're pretty much saying that iGels are equally as important and equally as good to use. So the why is looking at why this is an issue. So to put that into practice, here's a explanation of how that might be written. The first one, we'll spend 2 minutes just reading through those sentences. The first one is with no evidence, and the second one has got evidence. without that Smith 2011, it just looks like, for example, if I wrote it, it just looks like my opinion. So I haven't got that from anywhere else. It's not written from another person. It's just me saying stuff, which unfortunately in academic practice, I'm at my position where I'm writing my PhD now, and it's only now that I'm really allowed to write my own opinion without any evidence. So prior to that, in undergraduate settings, you need to have evidence to back up what you're saying. You're allowed to conclude and analyze and provide your own opinion in relation to the evidence, but you can't just write your opinion on its own. So it needs to have evidence. It's a bit incorrect to say your opinion means nothing, which some academics say, which is a bit demoralizing when you start in academia, but it does mean something as long as it's based on evidence and as long as you can back it up. So really important that they've got that reference at the end. At this stage, if you get how to write the reference, we're not that bothered. You just need to have a go and just write something in there, because it's more about how to write a sentence and how to put the evidence in there. So by all means, if you can get used to writing references, brilliant. And there's some guidance on there how to do it, but it's more just about writing analytically. So the next one's about how. So how does this work in practice? How does this one factor affect another? And how does the parts fit into the whole? A big thing about paramedic practice is the program you will study, if you come onto the paramedic degree, is very much about practice and how the evidence relates to practice. You're not doing a philosophy degree. You're not doing a degree that's not related to your role. It is about what you do on the day-to-day back of an ambulance or in a GP practice or in those environments. So it's about looking at the theory and see how it relates to practice. And that's key in terms of doing that. And if you can provide a piece of evidence that talks about how you do things in practice, then that's a real good way to write your assignments. So an example of that, I'll give you a few minutes to read through those sentences and just see how you can see there's any difference. So can you see how the latter one says that blog states that direct placement can be an issue and can have additional risks, whereas the first one, it's just someone stating something. We'd also call that unsubstantiated assertion, bit of a complex word, but you're not backing yourself up with any evidence. It's Martin in the pub on his own in the corner, and the bottom one is me with all my mates around me having a good argument. So it's really picking on Martin here, which is he's unmuted. So
fair play, mate. Fair play. Yeah.
You can't come back at me. But yeah, it's about backing yourself up with evidence, and that's all academic practice is. Sometimes you might use it beforehand and say blog states, or sometimes you might put it at the end, but it's about backing yourself up with evidence. The next one's what if. So what if this was wrong? What are the alternatives? So a big thing in paramedic practice is you may have heard it a few times out there, and we're trying to challenge this viewpoint now, but there may be some people that still say, when they get asked why they do it, they say, we've always done it that way. And that's something we're trying to challenge now as a profession. We're trying to be more evidence-based. There are lots of things that we've always done. I'll put that question in, a good question, Dan, and please put questions in there if you think of them, and I'll pause for them questions in a minute as well. But a big thing that we have been traditionally not very good at is just doing what we've always done. There's some good quotes about if you do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So actually trying to change things are really important, and trying to challenge them. Intubation is one thing that we've always done. So to put that into practice, the first one, again, we'll give you 2 minutes to just read that. So we all know that that top sentence is true because you've probably been in practice, and the amount that paramedics are exposed to intubation means that we're not very good at it. Although we may think we are, and everyone always thinks they're amazing when they get an intubation in and walk off and think they're brilliant, generally we don't get exposed to it that much. So the next one just puts that into a sentence and talks about how there is two elements to it. There's a risk of skill decay, and that's the reason why we're not very good at it. Now, another solution might be to do loads of simulation and to train people up and to go into theatres and do loads of practice. That may be a solution, or a solution that most trusts are moving towards now, where they give it to the more senior clinicians and only they do it and they turn up on scene. So that's what other areas do. So that's just how you put it into practice. There was a question from Dan that talks about to be in quotation marks. If you've got a reference that you're using and you're using it word for word exactly, so you've just taken it out of the book and put it into your assignment, then it needs to be in quotation marks. What they've done here is they've changed it round. It's called paraphrasing. So they've made it fit within their sentence and read the book, taken the ideas and then put it into their assignment. You don't need to put quotation marks for that. So quotation marks are only needed if you're taking it word for word out of a book or a journal into your piece of work. Again, I'll give you 2 minutes to just read through this. It's another example. We're going to give you a cheat sheet in a minute to do those furthermore bits and those introductions to sentences, because if you put those posh words in, it makes you sound posh for the rest of the sentence. So we've got some lists of what those words are to help you out later on. So again, can you see how the top one, we all know that's true, but they haven't got any evidence in it, so it's not argument, whereas the second one has argument. Generally, in terms of gradings, at level 4, which you guys won't be doing because you're entering at level 5, at level 4 you can pretty much pass if you put 1 or 2 references in and a lot of that unsubstantiated assertion. At level 5 you need to have references in there to pass your assignments. So what we accept in between balance of description and analysis, there's more analysis as you go up the levels and less description. So when you're last year of your degree, you need to be analysing all the time with a little bit of description. So the reason we're doing this now is because you're coming in straight at level 5 and you need to know that there's a requirement to use evidence. I'll just pause there to see if there are any questions and see if anyone's got any questions they want to ask. By all means, speak up or put it in the chat. Brill. Okay. Everyone will be brilliant at referencing then. No. So the main premise is that description on its own isn't good enough for academia. You need to have some referencing. And if you can have a go at putting some references into your workbook, that'll be great.
Tom, sorry, Tom, just to add on that, so the cite them right with the referencing, it's on the introduction page on your Pebble Pad now. It's the first link you come to. If you click on it, it opens up as an Adobe document, just a PDF, and it's got all this information on there as well. That'll be on your main introduction page, just below the video on it as the first one.
So I think I can just hopefully talk to that now. I've got it here.
He says.
See, Martin.
Yeah.
So this is a referencing guide. It's meant to be A5, so it's a bit backwards here, but it starts with this one here. And it talks about how to, what you need to focus on is this bit here, and it tells you how to reference. So what referencing is, and how to reference the author, the year, how to put the title, the edition. What generally in terms of an assignment is, there's something called a citation, which if I just open up, can you see here, these are the citations where it says ASMA UK 2008. So the citation is the bit you write in your actual assignment. And what they'll do is they'll write a reference list at the end where they've got all the information in it. So you write a citation in the text where you're saying, this is what I'm referencing, because it would be too long to put all these long-winded ones in the actual body of the text. So we do a shorthand reference inside the text, and then we put the full information at the end. And this handbook tells you how to do both. I can find it. So this tells you how to do the long one at the end, and it's color coded, so it tells you how to do a journal article, a book, and then tells you how to do the in-text ones as well. But just have a go. There's no pressure on it. In particular referencing, even less so. You just need to have a go at writing the assignments and getting the written bit correct. So just have a go, practice it now just to get used to it. But what we're looking for is engagement and you having a go. That's what's going to pass or fail you on this program. If you just don't have a go at doing it, then we'll come back and say that's not good enough quality. But if you have a go at trying to put things in there, that's the best way to do it. So let's go back to the... So what you can do to get the even higher marks are to put your own independent thought. And if you remember earlier, I said that you're allowed to use your opinion as long as it's based on evidence. So as long as you put the evidence in, you can then put a statement like this in at the end. So I'm just going to, because I don't have a whiteboard on me, I'm just going to show you a piece of paper that I've written down. And basically what you need to do as a more simple way to describe it is you need to have within your sentences and within your paragraphs two things. You need to have the what and the why. So the what is the description and the why is the analysis. So what you need to do in your assignments, if you can see that, is have the what and the why. You need to have the description of everything and then your understanding of that. Another way you can look at it is called the Z argument. So you may say, Smith 2013 says it's important to ensure patients can get enough oxygen in cardiac arrest. So that'll be one argument. Then you might say, however, Jones 2013 says that paramedics lose skill decay because they don't do it very often. And then you put your own understanding saying, therefore, this is why eye gels have been introduced because they're pretty much as good and don't carry the risk. So that Z argument is a way to say one guy says this, another guy says this, and then have your own understanding. So out of this session, if you can remember having the what and the why, and remember that if you can, have as much analysis as you can and as least description. And that's what you need to think about in terms of academic writing. And they're the rules you need to learn. And once you get a bit more understanding, you'll start to learn a few more tricks as you're going along. But on a basic sense, academic writing is about backing yourself up with evidence and not just describing things. And if you can do that, you'll get some good marks in academia. To get the best marks, you start putting independent thought in, but just to get good marks, you need to have the description and the analysis. So this is putting it all together, and we've got one without evidence and one with evidence. So I'll just let you read that sentence, or that paragraph, sorry, and then I'll put the other paragraph in so you can see the difference. Right, I'll move on to the second one. Can people see how that differs, and about how that, and that's someone that's practiced it a lot and knows how to write an assignment. So that will be a real good way to construct your paragraph and your response. It's not something you may be able to do that straight away, and some people just click with academic writing, some people don't, and it's just a thing that you just need to practice. So simply put, it's an analytical approach, and it's questioning things. And it's the same set of questions can be asked when you're thinking, reading and writing. You will all do this analytical thinking in your day-to-day practice. You'll think about patients, you'll challenge people, you'll ask your paramedic why they're doing something, you'll ask a nurse, you'll do it in your day-to-day practice. You just need to learn how to play the academic game, because you'll all be analytical people and you'll all know how to analyze, because you're working in a very complex environment as a technician in the ambulance service, care assistant. So here are some cheat sheets I'll give you to make you sound more posh, and it helps out when you're writing. So a lot of people use these first three: state, suggest, explains, but you can use all these words to vary what you're saying. And what I did when I was in my undergraduate is I printed out this and I had it on my wall behind me. So when I was saying the same thing every time, I could look up at that and use something else. And it's just an easy way of making you sound more articulate than I was as an undergraduate. And then when you start practicing it, you get to use these in your common speak as well. So a good cheat sheet to use and print out when you're writing things. So here's some examples. So Smith states, that's generally neutral. Smith claims, generally having a weakness, because we said neglect. Clearly demonstrates, that's positive. So they're using those words to have a different type of argument, and using those descriptive words to state it differently. Here are some more, maybe a bit more complex phrases about adding ideas, emphasizing things, illustrating ideas, comparing things to each other. So again, it's important to realize the issue of skill fade. You may say, emphasizing a point, above all, patient care is important above everything else. So rather than professional identity, you need to think about the patient. You might use that. You might illustrate it. For example, if you're in a rural setting, you may need to intubate, but if you're in an urban setting, there's a car 2 minutes away. So you may illustrate that point. And then we've got some more about contrasting ideas, placing ideas. And I'll give you a link of a PDF that has all these that you can use. and it's in the PowerPoint as well. So this is the phrase bank. Let me just check this works, hopefully. So same thing, it's Manchester University, tells you how to be critical, classifying things, defining terms, introductory phrases. So it talks through all these different things in detail about how to do it. So great piece of resource that you can use. It's really easy to make you sound academic. I certainly used it when I was learning. And Skills at Cumbria is a great place to go as well. So the things to remember before we move on and just have open discussions is it's a game. You need to learn the rules of a game. It's like any sport or anything you do to start off with. You may be a bit clumsy and awkward when you start, and it's just about learning how to do it. What you need to have is the what and the why, so the understanding. And it is achievable if you just learn the rules. I've got a reading speed of a 12-year-old, I think, with my dyslexia. I was very rubbish when I started. Someone explained to me the rules when I was doing it, and now I write publications and do a PhD. So it is possible there. You just need to learn how to play the game. And we will teach you that when you come onto the university course, and we'll do a lot of work, but hopefully this introduction should help you develop that. Are there any questions now? That's been a lot that we've gone through. It is recorded, I think, and we can play back it later so you can go through it. There are lots of videos out there to help, and I would just encourage you to practice it now as much as you can, because when you come onto the paramedic course, you're going to have to be doing this as well as learning the paramedic role. So trying to practice this as much as you can and get onto that. Has that been useful and helpful to go through that? Yeah.
Very.
Brilliant. And again, as a university, it's called widening participation, but we're very used to bringing people from non-traditional backgrounds into paramedic practice. So our military students from very much a similar sort of area. So it will be a big apprehension coming into higher education if you do get onto the degree, but we're there to support you as teams and go through stuff like this. So the resources are there. Please watch through this video again, have a go. Please have a go at trying to write stuff sooner rather than later, because you'll probably forget something. So just have a go at trying to write a couple of sentences maybe in the next week or so, just to get it in there and get it practicing. It is something no longer, people may say they're not academic, and that's fair enough, but this is now the only way to become a paramedic. So even if you don't buy into the fact of academic writing, this is something you need to do and get on with, because it's something that's pushing the paramedic profession forwards, it's challenging the profession, and it's the way to move forwards. And the apprenticeship is the best of both worlds, where you get to work alongside it and do the academic practice. So it's a good model to use. I'm going to hand back over to Martin now, just to talk through the next steps. And then we've got a bit of time for open questions, for maybe some question answering that you need to go through.
Brilliant, thanks, Tom. So really the next steps, so the questions raised earlier on about the timeline on this, I think we've answered it. It's got to be completed by the end of August. But as we've said, since the start of this program, try not to leave things to the back end of it, because you can put a lot of pressure on yourselves to complete it all. The end of August timescale is tight, but it is achievable. We've explained the reason before for that, because of the paramedic apprenticeship starting in October. So we do have to adhere to that timescale. Really, all this video, first of all, because we've recorded it and it is really useful resource, is everyone happy for myself to upload this onto the PebblePad introduction page, so that yourselves, but potentially other SCAS students, can also look at that? Or does anyone have any reservations in that respect?
No,
is that okay?
That's good.
Yeah, good. I think it's just really handy to play back and to go through, but obviously I just wanted everyone's consent, so I think that'll be really useful. The videos and the links, we have embedded them, we've checked them with Jeremy, they should all be working. Again, it's a new academic module, so If there are any links that aren't working, just fire me a quick email and we will get back to you pretty quick on that respect. So next steps, continue to complete the level 3, and a bit of advice on that. As I say, I've looked at the majority of your portfolios and there's some really good evidence coming in there, really good evidence. It's really pleasing to see. A lot of the pieces for the units, we've only got one piece uploaded, which is fine at the moment because I appreciate where we are and it is really good evidence. But certainly over the next few weeks, try and get some units completed to upload the second piece of evidence into that unit, just to try and make your workload a bit more manageable, obviously, when we're going into July and August. Complete the gap and the RPEL. In fairness, I think pretty much everyone's completed the gap and the RPEL. Start the level 4. We designed this portfolio so that you can literally come in, have a little go at it, save it, go away and come back into it. So you can keep jumping in and out of this portfolio. So the best advice I can give is try not just to park the level 3 part of it and focus on this module because you'll fall behind on your practical logbook. Try and run them parallel with each other and just dip into both of them, okay, from a workload management perspective. The next tutorial, really, we're going to take the focus onto looking at your practical logbook and bringing those together. We will touch on any questions you may have on the level 4, of course. It is pretty self-explanatory, this academic. There's loads of guidance and videos on there. But the focus next tutorial will be to start bringing your practical logbooks together a bit more. So that, because that will be mid-July, then that will give us 5 or 6 weeks up to the deadline where hopefully we can answer any queries we may have. So I think that's really the requirements for the next tutorial. It'll be really good if you can get a few units completed. And just run these 2 qualifications in tangent with each other, and we should be absolutely fine in that respect. So that's really the next steps moving forward, and the best advice I can give you with that one. We will put the video on the introduction page as well to make sure that that's working. Okay. So I think really that's the next steps from myself, Tom. So I guess we could just open up the floor for any questions, just for 5 or 10 minutes, if you're happy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Okay.